Hello and welcome to Agency Office Hours. I'm Karl Sakas, Agency Advisor, and this is Agency Office Hours Q&A for June 2024. Here's a preview of what we'll be covering today to help you grow your agency more smoothly and profitably. First up, we have a guest expert, Chris Dubois, speaking about crafting your agency lead gen offer. What do you do to make that appeal to the people that you want to appeal to? He'll be sharing some visuals for that, and we'll have a chance for him to answer your questions as we go. That'll be in the first half or so. Then I'll share a preview about how you can get early bird pricing for my upcoming workshop in July. That's Diversify Your Agency's Lead Gen Strategy, that Gabriel Marguglio of Next Any Marketing and I are leading live and virtually in July. We'll share how you can save $200, but you'll have to act quickly. Then we'll have a question from Meg in the Boston area, specifically about lead gen. We'll dig in on that. And finally, we have a question from Sean in Monterey, California, specifically around proposals. What is the best way to present your sales proposal to a client to boost your close rate or your, well, closed won rate, maybe not the closed lost rate? So if you're one of those three people, please be ready to unmute yourself and join in. If you'd like to ask a question at a future office hours, we've got spots throughout the rest of the year. Sign up, and when you RSVP for the office hours, you have an opportunity to share a question. Either I or my colleague Kate, who's our producer today, will follow up and let you know if you're on the list. So reminder, everything's being recorded. Don't share anything out loud or in chat that we're not going to publish the chat, or at least that's not the usual plan, but don't say anything out loud that you wouldn't want to become public. All right. Well, looking forward to digging in. Let's get started. So our first guest today is actually a guest expert, Chris Dubois. Chris, let me go ahead if you want to unmute yourself, and we're adding you on Spotlight. Welcome to Agency Office Hours.
Thanks for having me, Karl.
So, we connected around your event, the All-In Agency Summit. I've also been on your podcast, the Agency Forward podcast. And, as I was recruiting guests for this guest expert spot, I figured you'd have good info to share. And you had mentioned, of course, I got my lead gen workshop coming up in July. You have some advice. So before we dig into your advice, if you could introduce yourself if people are not familiar with you yet.
Sure. Hello, everybody. So my name's Chris. I run the Dynamic Agency OS, which is essentially an operating system for your agency specific to injecting cash into your business, right? So a bunch of different operating. Some people use EOS. There's, scaling up. So all these different systems. We're not talking business meetings. We're not talking anything else. We're talking how do we bring money, revenue into the business so you can do all of those other things. I've been running this now couple months full-time, but I've been building it on the side, helping agencies, because I was the CEO of an agency up until last June, where I stepped down to start building all of this. And then I have some past experience within the Army as an infantry officer. And so I somehow sparkle some of that in here so that with all my risk mitigation, and that's probably it. We're not going to jump out of airplanes or do anything else that's on the list today.
People do not have to sign a safety first.
Correct. No waivers yet.
There we go. There we go. All right. Well, thank you for the introduction. So, I guess when it comes to creating the ideal offer, maybe if you could start by defining, like, what do you mean? And why is it important?
Sure. So the ideal offer has a couple different things that have to go into it, right? It needs to be compelling for the individual who's buying. So you need one, it has to solve a problem that someone actually needs solved, which a lot of agencies struggle with this one piece, right? It's, hey, we're going to deliver what we think the problem is, which is they need more leads. Like, well, no, they need revenue, or they need, for your specific agency, they need this, right? You also need very targeted messaging around that offer so that you're attracting the right person. Not everyone has the same problem. And I'll get into some examples of what this looks like in a bit. And then you also need to be able to differentiate your solution from everybody else, because especially in the marketing agency game, right? You're constantly fighting for market share. Everyone else is going to say they do the same thing you do, but they
Right.
don't. You actually do it differently if you think about it differently. So as long as you have all of those things, right, you have an offer that can take off pretty quick.
Makes sense. So I mean, in terms of what's important, it sounds like basically you're trying to stand out. So I guess where do we go from here? I know you have some visuals.
Yeah.
But
So
go for it.
I'll pull up my screen share. I'm gonna walk everyone through this simple process for creating and rapidly testing an offer. Okay, so the idea is that getting this out there very fast. There's 6 steps. I'm going to try to make this quick so you can ask questions afterwards. But let's just dive right into the steps. Feel free to hit the questions. I'll pull up the chat on my other screen. Maybe there it is. All right, I have the chat up, so feel free to ask questions throughout. I can answer them, and then Karl obviously ask away.
Yeah.
So step 1, looking at your team. Most people look right at the offer and what do we have to do to get this out there? But really, you should be looking at your team to make sure that they can actually deliver this offer at a high bar. If you're not doing that, you're going to be miserable trying to deliver this thing that's producing mediocre results. We don't want that. Okay, so step 1 here is doing a competency check for our teams. And we want to identify the key players. You can Google this. It's a skill will matrix. I didn't create it. Someone much smarter, I'm dropping his name. He runs a leadership school down at Columbus, Georgia, actually. But within here, right, we want to identify those who can and can't, and those who will and won't. The ones who will and can, those are our A players, right? They're in the right position. They're doing the right things. These are the ones that we want to look at and really identify them in this box because their skills matter more. These are the 20% of people that are going to be delivering 80% of the results for our agency. So we really want to make sure that we track those. At the same time, right, the ones who can't, all we have to do is apply training and we can get them there. If you know where someone is and where you want to get them to, you should be able to bring them up, right? Build that plan out. Super easy. The won't into will is a little harder because motivation is very personal, right? We're individualizing everything. Motivation for someone might just be a bigger paycheck. It could be a title for someone else. Someone might not be in the right role. And just by identifying what are their skills and then moving them into a role where their skills are better aligned with the targeted outcomes, right? Now they're going to be happier. They're going to produce better results and they actually slide over into this can and will quadrant. But we want to track everybody. Right. And so just go through, do this for your agency. Wouldn't recommend sharing it with your team. There might be some broken hearts when they see some of this. But then we're going to move into the skill highlights. First name, I'm already dropping his first name. Sullivan. Dan Sullivan, I believe.
Dan Sullivan. Yep.
Dan Sullivan. There we go, man. I'm going to reference a lot of people in here, and hopefully they're all up there. Has something called the unique ability, right? And it's essentially what's your superpower. And in order, you have one. Everyone on this call has a unique superpower. You should be able to identify to make sure that you're doing work that fits within that box because it's going to make you happier. You're going to be able to deliver better results. Everything moves better when you're doing that. With this section, what you want to do is outline every unique ability within your team, right? Find every single thing that you could be capturing to build an offer from. And you just list it all out here so that you know what these are. Because then you're going to move into this nice little tracker. Now, I stole this one from Karl with the idea of these are the 6 positions within your agency, right? So generally, everyone's going to fit into one of these buckets in some form. Don't get too tied up in where the boxes are lined up. This is an example. But the idea here is you're going to take all of these skills, ones that you think are just critical, everyone on your team needs, as well as those unique abilities, right? And line them up here. Then you go through for account manager. What should they actually be performing at for each of these skills, right? Mm-hmm. Line that up. Do the same thing for all 6 of these. And then the next step is going through with your actual team saying, okay, this is our target for an account manager. How does everyone actually stack up if they hold that role? And it just gives you a bearing for like, where do we actually sit? Where are the gaps within our team that we need to fill if we're going to be able to deliver at a high level? Okay. That is step 1. Once you have all this, you just keep it logged, track somewhere because it's going to come in later in the other steps. I'm going to come up quickly for air.
Key thing here, when you're looking at the unique abilities, usually people are doing that for themselves. The key thing here is you're doing it for yourself, but then you're putting all of them together.
Mhm.
Got it.
Correct. So step 2. Now we're going to track the ideal outcome for our target buyer, right? Super simple. First, we're going to brainstorm everything they could possibly want as that dream outcome. Think as big as possible. And this is a brainstorm. Now I'm going to reference Ted Lasso. Don't bring an umbrella to a brainstorm, right? Get everything locked in here. Line up every single dream outcome. You're like, they would love this. If it's like walking the dog, maybe keep that one off. But like everything you can imagine goes in here, because we're going to go into the value equation next. Now, this is from Alex Ramosi, $100 million offers. Strongly recommend if you're interested in offers, you read that book. But the idea here is we want this dream outcome to be as big as possible, right? When you're doing math, anytime you're going to multiply here, or divide rather, everything on the top needs to be really big. Everything on the bottom needs to be really small. I did not do well in math, but I understand that. So I know everyone here has that piece down. We're going to take that dream outcome, maximize it. Now the perceived likelihood of achievement, and we're saying perceived likelihood, right? So how can we make someone feel like if they work with us and try getting this offer, they are going to, it's going to feel very valuable and they have the confidence that we can deliver. Step 1 is by showing proof that we can deliver this, right? So we need to go back to what is our team actually good at, because that's where we're going to have proof of them being able to deliver results before. So we're capturing all of those testimonials, case studies, anything, right? We can talk about how our team has, everyone has gone to this specific course in this, unknown place, right? Anything you can think of that would make it feel like they will crush it if they work with you now needs to get added to this. Then on the bottom, time delay as low as possible. If I tell you I can get you a result in 1 year versus 1 month, it's going to change how valuable that offer feels, right? As long as we still have this perceived likelihood of achievement very high, so that you're like, okay, it's not BS, right? Like you actually believe I can do it. And effort and sacrifice, you want that minimized as much as possible. The less effort someone has put in, the less they have to sacrifice, the more likely they're going to work with you. And so we capture that. And I'm moving very fast. So again, just hit any comments or questions in the chat.
One thing to consider, just in terms of some examples about dream outcome, perceived likelihood. So it seems like something you could do to help boost it would be, for instance, agencies who are HubSpot partners often will require everyone to have some level of HubSpot certification by the time they join, or within 3 months, or something like that. And I saw there's a question from Meg in chat about effort or sacrifice. That's for the client, not the agency.
Yes.
Is that correct?
Yeah, that's for the end user who's making the purchase.
Got it.
Right.
So
it could be a free offer.
In a sense, that this is sort of an adjusted version of return on investment, right? What is the return in terms of the outcome weighted by the likelihood, but then you're having to pay for time delay, effort, sacrifice. That could include money, I guess, too, as well. All right.
Yeah, exactly.
That makes sense. All right.
And then this is just a way I've been kind of visualizing this. I'm really big on making sure if there's a problem, that you're looking at it the right way. Mindset is huge, right? The top piece is very much the strategy around how we're going to get after this. And then the bottom piece being the tactics of how we're going to deliver on it. And so when you start thinking about it like that, it might actually help you when you're brainstorming and thinking through what needs to go into each of these pieces to be able to model that out. Now, this is where it starts getting more fun. Keep in mind everything we've already covered, okay? Don't drop anything yet. It's all going to come together, I promise. Okay, this is now from Aaron Fletcher. So I'm like piecemealing everybody. I'm not an original thinker, but I can get pretty creative with others' ideas. I have used this with agencies, with SaaS companies, tech companies. I did it with a restaurant. It works. Okay, this path is awesome. The idea here, we're going to take that dream outcome that we think, and we know that's what they want, and they're starting right here. Then we're assuming they're starting from like ground zero, right? In reality, they're starting somewhere along this path to get there. Now, all we're going to do with these 9 boxes is list out what are these steps in order to get someone from start to finish. And those steps are going to be unique to you. This is where you start getting like really clear and being able to differentiate your offer real easily, right? It's because you have a full path here. And this path, you need to be able to say, like, that even if someone does not work with you, this is the path. Like you believe this is the path for them to get that result. The reason it's in threes is because people think in threes, right? 1, 2, 3, and many. If it's any more than that, people aren't going to really read it. If you want to do 4 for a section, do it. If you want to do 2, go ahead. There's no perfect model for this. It's like whatever you need to do to fit in here. But I would recommend also naming each of these like categories. So these 3 would kind of be lumped together. So now you can name it. To give you a better idea, I just threw my own for the dynamic agency in here. And so I believe if you want to become a dynamic agency, right, that you have to go through the operators, offers, operations in that order. Now, the reason this works, and I'm going to get, well, I'll wait till we come back. It'll hit harder, okay. I promise. But so like, this is the path, right? I believe no matter what, whether you work with me, whether you work with someone else, if you do these things, I am going to help you bring more revenue into your business at a very high level, very quickly. Everything is going to work. Everyone's going to be happier. You're going to save more time. Like that's it. If you can do these things, your agency will feel better, right? And work better.
So now, ultimately, yes. As people are thinking kind of what is their version of that? I first heard of that from Andrew Dimsky around the idea of opinionated software. That is software that has, the company has a belief that you need to do things a certain way. Thus, you will do things a certain way. Versus, say, Google Docs, Microsoft Word, you can type anything you want. Versus, right. Say, you must fill in certain fields, certain are required, certain this or there. You must do it that way. So, of course, for anyone who's listening, is like, we don't have a certain way of doing that. You probably do some extent. You may not have thought about it that way. Okay.
Right. Yeah. And what's important, like I've done this for even separate offers within our agency. So, and as the agency I was running, we were HubSpot solutions partner. We would do HubSpot onboarding. We created a map like this just for HubSpot onboarding. These are the 9 steps you need to get from not using HubSpot to being like a HubSpot power user, right? For your company. Yeah. And we mapped it all out. And now anyone, and well, again, I'll come back to it. I'm getting ahead of myself. So the next step 4 is that we want to look at all of these steps and decide which one are we going to turn into an offer, right? Because this on its own is one massive offer. This is essentially your core offer for your business. But all 9 of these get to be individual offers, which you get to use for lead generation. Okay, so what we want to do is identify which one do we think is going to be the most valuable to make right now. We're trying to very quickly inject revenue into the business, right? So you list out the names of all of those steps. And then just simple chart. You can use whatever scoring matrix you want. I put this one in because it's make it a little easier. But like how fast do they need this resolved, right? How appealing is it? You'll figure these out. You'll get a score. List all those scores down here. Whatever's highest, you should probably start with. If you come up with a pair, something, pick one. Like it doesn't matter. You're just testing. We want to be able to move very fast. But the big question is, can your team currently deliver on it? So when you go back and say, because you might map this entire thing out, right, and realize like, well, actually, this is something, modeling success is something very critical to making this happen. My team is not currently equipped to do this. I'm the one who has to keep stepping in and executing and delivering. So we have a gap and we need to be able to fill that. Maybe it's not the best place for us to create an offer around right now, right? Even if it's important for our client. And so you're keeping that in mind. Then, so once this one, super simple step, right? Once you have that offer, we're going to smoke test. I don't know who created the idea of smoke testing, but it's genius. And it is one thing for an agency you should be doing continuously. I would recommend doing it with your clients because it is the fastest way to test something and save money in the process, as well as time. So I threw together just a very simple wireframe here, right? What is the type of asset? Give it a good title, subheadlines, power bullets. When you expect this to launch, because all we're trying to do is get them to sign up for the wait list based on what we want to put in this offer. So the more people that join this wait list, the more like popular we know it's going to be as an offer. So we can say, okay, we had 200 people get on the wait list for this. Now it's worth it for us to go in and actually build the offer. If we're like, how many times have you built something, put it up live, and then no one touches it? Right? I've done this. I built an entire decision-making course and no one purchased. No one signed up for the launch date and was like, man, that's disappointing. I probably should have tested that beforehand. right? To make sure my audience had it, and I was doing all those things.
I
I
mean, in
threw
a sense, it's kind of like crowdfunding where,
right,
you raise the money, then you move forward. And you need some degree of prototype first, but, or experience, but it's like
exactly,
get the votes with dollars first. Yeah.
right. So I just threw some copy in, completely fake offer here. Like nothing about this is real. I just put copy into a thing, so that you could see an example of what this looks like. But this needs to be appealing enough that they actually fill out the form, right? So
Mhm.
this is very, very much directed at the individual to get them to sign up for on this wait list. And what's fun, you can put whatever you want in here. You haven't built it yet. So if you think something would be amazing to have in this offer, put it in, right? We'll figure it out how to actually make it happen after because we just want to see if people want it. But now where the real magic happens is on the thank you page. Okay. They've signed up for the wait list. They're going to a thank you page, and you're going to say, hey, you're on it. Check out this video. And then you're going to give them a spot where they can book some time with you. But the video has a very specific format that we want to knock out. First, congratulate them, make them feel really good about what they have. Then build credibility in case they have no idea who you are. You're really going to sink that in, right? Now, explain what they're going to get. Hey, I know you're on the wait list. This is everything we're planning to put in here. We're building it out. We're working through this. It's going to be awesome. Really hit those points so that they get very excited about getting this offer. And then you stretch the gap. Now, this is the critical piece. And what we want to do is say, hey, you're getting this offer around designing offers, right? It's super important. But if you haven't done, and you're going to pull up a little slide, where is it? This. If you haven't done everything else to get up to here, it doesn't matter how well that offer looks. You're not going to be able to deliver on it, and you're going to struggle, right? And so I mean, I do this all the time for my offers, but like if you haven't differentiated your solution, like no, you cannot build an offer. If you haven't assessed your team, aligned their roles, and plan growth so that you're delivering something that they can actually deliver on, right? It doesn't matter. And so what we're trying to do with this portion, and sorry for anyone getting screen sick here from me jumping around, anyone who's coming in for that specific offer, there's a good chance they haven't done everything else within your path that you believe they need to be working on. So we stretch that gap to make them see the pain that they are going to go through if they don't address all of these other pieces. Then you offer them the call and say, hey, if you just want to chat about what this can look like while you're waiting for the offer, right? We're still going to, whether you book a call with us or not, we're still delivering this offer as soon as it's ready. It'll be in your inbox. But if in the meantime, feel free to grab some time with us, right? That's
So
the thank you page.
a key thing here is you're not claiming that it exists yet. It's like we're building
Correct.
to get on the wait list. So when it does, things like that. And the call, I mean, also part of the call is to get feedback as you're building it,
Mhm.
things like that. So that seems like there's a win-win built into that. We have a couple questions.
Yep.
Is there anything you'd add beyond this point before we get into questions?
No, I think so I think this might actually help with some of the questions. So for this group, I created just an offer to try this out so that you don't have to fill out the form. This is the thank you page. So you can see what a thank you page will look like. All right. So snapoffersystem.com, snapoffersystem.com/# thank you. And I can pull them up here. Now this is something I think is super important for everybody. I made this page, conceptualized this offer, made the thank you page and the video. I did all of that in about 4 hours. So you can very quickly build this and test it. Now the landing page, I went a little deeper than what I showed on like in here. So like this is the bare minimum that you would need. You can see the top still follows the same exact format, but then I went deeper in here. You can check it out. Just putting the copy in for a landing page using marketing chops, right? To make something appealing. That 4 hours includes making a graphic that may or may not be good. I don't know. Nobody's given me feedback yet.
Good enough
I did
with
something
the context of 4 hours.
right. I also tried something down here to see, okay, we have the wait list. You get this for free if you join the wait list, but to build some urgency, and reason to join the wait list now. It's like, hey, as soon as it's ready, I'm charging people. Those first 25, right? $97. After that, it's $500. Get on the wait list now. It's free. Why would you not? Right. So now people are hopefully going to join the wait list to get this offer. And then that'll take them to this thank you page where I say, hey, you're on the wait list. Watch this video. I made a video walking through, and I have, it's like 4 slides that I'm just walking through as like a basis so that they have something to look at. They follow that, and then there's a place where you can book on my calendar.
And the
And
video
so,
basically is walking through kind of your prototype as you understand it now as you're building.
right. And so talk about everything they're going to get with the offer, and then, and let me mute myself on this. And then it's walking them through saying, hey, this offer you just got fits in here on this model. But again, everything else within this path is still really important for you to have. And so it forces everyone to now look at their own business and say, okay, well, have I done all of these things? And usually they haven't, because you just created this path, right? You have said, this is how we believe you can get to this dream outcome. And so you're already reframing the problem for them and getting them to look at it differently. And so now there's a good chance they're actually going to book with you. And like I said, I've done this for my agency. I did this for tech companies, SaaS, and I'm talking like, we did a payroll services company. I've done a like a POS provider has done that. It works. The model is great, and something you can very rapidly test for yourself. I use CARRD.co for like $20. You can get 10 landing pages to put together. And so like, that's really how I did this so fast, right? I just threw it up. I paid the $8 to own snapoffersystem.com, and you can test out an offer that way.
Awesome. Well,
So,
great.
all right.
We've got a couple questions before we shift into the next segment today.
Yep.
Let's see. One question is, it seems this works best for productized services. Is that fair? And it needs to be something that scales easily. What's your answer on that?
So it can be for any type of services. You could do it for like, I mean, it's a smoke test, right? So you're essentially doing an MVP before building out even like a minimum viable product. You're doing like a minimum viable idea to test it out. And so it could be anything. You could be building an entire software system and run this, or it could just be for designing websites. It could be, hey, we have a new process that we're rolling out for designing websites. If you want to be one of the first people to be part of this process to get your website designed, using this system where, I don't know, you get control over the end product and can very quickly tweak it, and you're not reliant on someone else to do, right? I'm making this up on the spot.
Sure.
But like, you can do it for services, you can do it for productized service. Your call. I do want to go back. I think Meg asked where I just lost it in the chat. Oh, for people who join the wait list.
What if you ultimately decide not to offer it?
Yeah. Most people will forget about it. If you do decide not to make it, I would recommend sending them an email. I've also had some where we put on the landing page that, hey, we're going to be delivering this in Q1. And then the Q1 rolls around, and it's like, we still don't have enough people, or maybe we haven't had time. It's like, we'll just change it to Q2, and we'll send an email to everybody else to remind them, hey, we still have this going. We're pushing it back because it's not a huge priority, but we want to make sure that it is still on our radar. And you're just kind of keeping in the loop. It also gives you another touch point within their inbox, right? Where they're going to start opening more emails from you instead of just completely forgetting about you.
Makes sense. We have different links in chat that I've shared from the example of the offer and the thank you page people can see as well. Two final things. We have time for one more question, which was, how do you make sure people who book time with you aren't going to waste your time? How would you answer that?
Get really targeted with your messaging. Otherwise, so I have done marketing for a lot of companies and a lot of agencies. I don't know if there's any perfect way to get people to fill out a form or sign up for a meeting perfectly.
Yeah.
Even if you put, like, I've had forms that say, this is not for support. If you are currently a customer, click here. And people still fill out the form, right? They just don't. It's like, people.
It happens. It happens. And final question, if people want to get in touch with you, how can they get in touch?
Sure. Find me on LinkedIn. It's probably the easiest place. You can shoot me a DM if you want to ask any other questions that we might miss here. Just Chris Dubois, you'll find me. You can look up dynamicagencyos.com, find my contact info there as well. I think actually there's on that snapoffersystem.com page, I put a link in the footer to my LinkedIn.
All right, awesome. And Kate, for people who are joining live, my colleague Kate just shared a link in chat. So Chris, thank you for volunteering and sharing today. And
thanks for having me. This was fun.
Absolutely. All right. Well, coming up shortly, we have a question from Meg about lead gen, digging in on that, and from Sean about proposals. Once you've generated the leads, what do you do when you're ready to make the proposal and hopefully win the deal? But first, a word from our sponsor, me, Sakas and Company. Today's office hours is sponsored by the Diversify Your Agency's Lead Gen Strategy workshop. It's all about generating leads for your agency in a more consistent way than you might be experiencing now. And rather than, kind of relying on chance or referrals, whenever I do surveys with agencies about their best lead gen techniques, referrals tend to come up. Like 70% of agencies, 70 to 75% in my research report that referrals are their best source of leads. Now, that makes sense. Referrals are great, but it can be hard to build your agency for growth if you're depending solely on referrals. In the workshop, Gabriel Marguglio and he's the CEO, founder of Next Indie Marketing, one of the leading HubSpot agencies. Though you don't have to be a HubSpot agency to benefit from the program, we're doing a 3-part live virtual program about improving your lead gen pipeline. That's coming up in July. If you buy your ticket by the end of June 2024, you'll automatically save $200 on your ticket. You get early bird pricing. And if you're going to do it, you might as well save money. It improves your ROI. And consider, say you get one additional client thanks to following the Diversify Your Lead-Gen workshop, it'll more than pay for itself. And no travel required. You'll also have access to the recordings if you need to miss one of the live sessions. If you have any questions on that, we've shared a link to it in chat or in the video description if you're watching the video later. Feel free to DM me or Kate on the live event if you have questions, or reach out through the website. All right. Next up, we have a question from Meg related to pipeline. Meg, if you want to unmute yourself and come on video. Welcome to Agency Office Hours.
Hi, thank you.
So you had asked, I'm going to paraphrase here and then would love if you'd elaborate a bit. You had asked, how can we improve our lead gen to get more business? Please tell me more and we'll dig in.
Sure. So similar to what you were just describing, the agency started in 2020, and as someone put it to me yesterday, back then it was like shooting fish in a barrel. Our biggest challenge was hiring folks to do the work. It was never difficult to find clients. We were entirely focused on B2B tech, and within that high tech. So we have some kind of core niches that we focus on, like cybersecurity. I have a really strong network, and networking, referrals, former clients coming back to us when they move on to a new company, all of that sort of stuff enabled us to grow really quickly up until early 2023, when the tech market crashed pretty hard with all the layoffs and budget cuts and such that you've all probably seen in the news if you're not directly involved in that industry. So one of the things I realized is that we don't have sales systems that bring in leads consistently. And we're in the process of trying out a few different things. We are working with a cold email consultant to build out lists and messaging and send those out. I have brought on a part-time salesperson who's doing outreach to their network because they have a different network than mine, and mine is pretty tapped out. We are testing out a pay per booked call service that another agency recommended to us. We have historically done a decent job with content on social media and on our website. So we do get some leads, not a ton, through SEO and content. But it's just not enough lead flow. We got to a point where our pipeline goal was 5x of the revenue we needed to bring in. We were hitting that goal and still not closing enough business. Close rates are bad right now, and haven't been historically, and it's taking much longer to close business. We're closing smaller deals. We're having a harder time bringing in retainers. We're having a harder time retaining clients. We've had to shrink our team quite a bit. And yeah, I'd like to get back to being picky about the clients that we bring in, and back to growing the agency and feeling more stable and secure. So any advice, welcome.
That is a tough spot. And, I'm sorry you're dealing with this. As you mentioned, early 2023, a lot of slowdowns, definitely a point. And I was picking up a sense of that in February of 2023. I think some of it may have started in late 2022, depending on clients. But, someone asked me kind of how was 2023 compared to other years. And I would say from my work as an agency advisor, from working with hundreds of agencies all over the world, 2023 was the worst year for most agencies in over a decade. So, for Meg, it sounds like a challenging year. And for others who are listening, whether live or on video, it's not just you, right? But what do we do now in 2024, as we're now halfway through? The promising thing is 2024 does seem to be going better overall than 2023. So that's good. But you still have the problem you mentioned around things being slower, people taking longer to close, wanting smaller commitments, shorter commitments, that kind of thing. So that's no fun. So let's dig in further on your specific question, Meg. So to kind of repeat the question, you're trying to sort out how to get more business into the business. That includes different factors like lead gen and other pieces. So what do you do if you need more business? As I mentioned, 2023 was a tough year. 2024 has been mixed so far. It sounds like, Meg, you're trying a lot of things that make sense or are worth exploring. Cold outreach is never ideal, but if the organic side isn't meeting your goals, it makes sense to do something. We'll talk a bit about cold outreach and outsourcing in particular in the July lead gen workshop. Gabriel is going to share about his experience working with an outsourced lead gen firm, including some warnings to consider about that. In my experience, it tends to go poorly more often than not, but a lot of it depends on how strong your offer is. Going back to what Chris was sharing about the offer, if you have kind of we work with anyone and we'll do anything for anyone, definitely don't hire a cold outreach firm. Like if they're ethical, they're going to decline to work with you. If you do everything for anyone, it's not in their interest to work with you. You mentioned finding the salesperson. I assume, of course, they have a commission structure to encourage them to close deals. So I think that makes sense, getting in front of others. Mentioned the pay per booked call performance fee. For that to work, of course, you want to make sure you have a clear definition of who's qualified or not. Rather than like, oh, well, they show up for a call. Otherwise, you run into a situation where it's like the iPad giveaway at a trade show. All you know about them is they like winning free iPads, kind of thing. So you may need to do some fine tuning as that goes. Obviously, of course, given your experience in content, makes sense continuing to do content. I mean, even if a current, say, content strategy isn't working as well as you'd like, you still want to keep publishing because people are going to look at visually. It's like, well, you focus on content. Do you have good content yourself? And, of course, various algorithm changes impact things. For instance, earlier when Chris was talking about trying to minimize the time delay, I was thinking about, you pay for convenience, and I was thinking about baby carrots. Yes, you pay more for baby carrots, but you don't have to peel them like they're ready to go. I was Googling baby carrots in the side monitor, and the first article that came up was basically why baby carrots are a scam. And the article was published like a month ago. So apparently, if you want to rank for baby carrots, you need something controversial and it needs to be recent. Like, I don't know, it's a little silly. Certainly, it's worth looking. Are there some article updates or upgrades you could offer to freshen them? I do that on a regular basis. If it's something I'm going to publish in a newsletter, I make sure that it's up to date. I make sure that the backlinks are current, and things like that. Something stood out where you mentioned that your goal was 5x the revenue, the pipeline would be 5 times revenue, which overall, I think that makes sense. You mentioned that because not every person that comes into the pipeline is going to close. You mentioned, though, that it sounds like conversion rates are down. So even at 5x, it wasn't quite there. Do you have a sense, and of course, we'll talk more about proposals with Sean in the next segment, but do you have a sense where things are falling off? Like if we think about the general pipeline, people you find them, they come in the door. You may do some sort of marketing qualification, some sort of sales qualification. Maybe there's a hand raise and some sort of conversation. You do a proposal, negotiation, and then they close. Do you have a sense of where the disconnect is in there? I know the conversions are down in general, but do you have a sense of what seems to have been the biggest negative impact?
That's a great question. We're seeing it across the board, but I think my gut is that we are losing people after the proposal goes out. And historically, we've had like a 60 to 70% close rate if we send a proposal, which is pretty strong.
Yes.
But I think some of it comes down to budget.
Okay.
Which is a challenging thing to address at this point because the type of work we do is high end by nature. Yeah.
Something to consider would be what would be an introductory offer, whether it's paid discovery or something else, to get your foot in the door to try to make things happen. For instance, if we think about Tiffany and Company, a lot of their stuff is very expensive, but they also have things in silver that are not as expensive. I mean, they're not cheap, but you could get something for a couple $100 rather than 5 or 10 or $100,000, kind of thing. And I mean, there are other jewelry brands that, you're not going to get the $200 item, but for instance, years ago, shortly after college, I bought my then girlfriend a silver pendant from Tiffany. It was like $200. And it's like, I wasn't going to buy something more expensive. I wasn't at that point, but it still comes in the blue box and the blue bag and all that. So like it sort of an entry level kind of solution. Is that something you've explored?
Yes, we've explored it, but definitely the training just now got me thinking about how we might explore it further. We've not had great success with the foot in the door offers that we've tested in the past, but we haven't tested it in the way that Chris was describing.
Yes. I mean, got the steps built in. So that's what I'd recommend as the next step. So that you're matching both supply and demand and sorting from there. And beyond that, it's like last year was a tough year. This year is not amazingly better. And so it's, kind of doing what you can with what you got. And I do believe 2025 will be better, sort of through the presidential election in the US, hopefully back to more certainty about whatever is next. So Meg, good luck as you work through that. Thank you so much for joining today.
Thank you.
All right, we have one final question today in agency office hours, a question from Sean. Sean, if you want to unmute, come on video, welcome to agency office hours.
Thanks a bunch, Karl. Good to be here.
Yes, so Let me paraphrase your question and then we'll dig in. The paraphrased version is this about sales proposals. When sharing proposals with prospective clients, is it better to share live or via email? If you could, please elaborate a bit and then let's dig in.
Karl, in the first few years of my company's existence, we would be excited to have the opportunity to have a discovery call with a prospect, and that would typically end up with, okay, we will send you a proposal, which we would do promptly, and then too often, crickets. Too often you just get ghosted, or, when we follow up and so we quickly learned that it is better to present the proposal in real time so that you can overcome objections and ask questions to find out what those potential objections may be. However, in the years since, we've always tried to get that second call to present, and that's always been difficult. And so we sort of weigh which is better, to send the proposal promptly after that first call, or to push and try to get that second call and get those executives on the Zoom or on a conference call in order to present it in real time. And it sort of feels to me like the age-old, what's your rate, what's your budget standoff.
Yeah.
I'd like to hear your perspective about that.
Yeah. Well, great question. So to repeat the question for the video, when it comes to business development for agencies, and when you're sharing a proposal with a prospective client, what's the best way to do that? Should you present it live? Should you share it via email? Should you do something else? My answer on that is either of those could be a match. Either you email it or you present it live. A key thing is that you need to get a commitment from the client either way. So the commitment could be they commit to a meeting where you present the proposal. The commitment also could be a meeting to do a Q&A conversation where you answer their questions about a proposal that you email, or that maybe you send through a proposal tool where it's all tracked and things like that. The key is the commitment from the client, either that they're going to meet with you to get presented the proposal, or that they're going to meet with you to answer questions about the proposal that you have not sent yet. And importantly, your sending that proposal is contingent on their booking the Q&A meeting.
That's a good one.
As you might imagine, yeah, I mean, think about, what benefits come to mind about that approach?
Well, either way, I'm going to be meeting with them again. So of course, it feels like win-win.
For sure. There are also some things you can build into that process to help you avoid swoop and poop later. Swoop and poop being the official technical term for when a client executive should have been involved, wasn't involved, and then shows up later, leaves you a mess, and you have to clean it up. And your client contact has to clean it up. They're usually not happy either. So part of this is that whether you do a proposal presentation or you send it in exchange for their committing to do a Q&A call, they need to bring the right people to that meeting. So for instance, sometimes I'll get sales inquiries from someone who is the number 2 at an agency. Often they're the head of operations, where maybe their boss has said, we need an agency consultant, or we need help. We're trying to figure out how to, maybe they've read my Work Lesser and More book or something like that. They're trying to figure out what to do. And so in that case, the person reaching out, the number 2, isn't necessarily the decision maker, but they've been tasked to find help. I mean, in other cases, I hear from the owner, it's like, Karl, I saw you speak at such and such, but on your email list ever since, I finally need your help. But, I'll sometimes do calls with the number 2 if it appears that they've been tasked to find someone, because that helps me understand, is this a legitimate opportunity? Is their boss not only needing help, does the boss want help? Because everyone, if you think about your services, everyone benefits. They need your agency services. They don't always want to pay for it, or at least want to pay the price that they need to. So, it's okay to have a more preliminary conversation with someone who's not a final decision maker, but don't do a proposal until you have commitments that all of the key decision makers will show up. It's important to do that in advance. Oh, go ahead.
How does that show up, Karl? How do you get that assurance that the right decision makers are showing up?
You basically build it into this is how it works. Chris earlier talked about here we have a process. I mentioned the idea of opinionated software. I do this in my sales process where it's basically like, here's the next step. So for instance, client where the outreach was from their operations head, there were two owners in addition to the ops head. And I'm like, great, sounds good. They shared some info. They completed my pre-questionnaire, my agency profile. Sounded like a good match. And ultimately, ultimately I said, that sounds like a fit. And I had some follow-up notes and so on. The next step is to do an exploratory call. That is you, operations head, and then I named the two owners. Now, if they had booked the call without the owners, I would have said, it's important that they're involved. My work is with the owners, sometimes the executive team, but always with the owners. Let's reschedule to find a time where they can join. And by the way, once you've laid that out up front, let's say the client CEO or the client CMO doesn't show up, and they're like, well, let's get started. We can just get started. We'll tell them later. No, 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 no. It's important that they be part of the meeting, and we're glad to reschedule. Now, obviously, if they keep jerking around and they won't commit or they keep no showing, you probably should consider if this is like their best behavior, what are they going to be like later? Probably not magically better. So these are all opportunities to fast fail things in your interactions with them. For instance, are they going to commit to a presentation of the proposal or a Q&A call before you agree to send the proposal? As a details person, I like getting it via email. I'm okay committing to a call, but I'd like to review it first, kind of thing. But either one, have they committed? Are they committing to send all of the key people? And one thing you could do, one advantage if you're talking to someone who is, say, the head of marketing, but the CEO will be involved, the marketing head has a high interest in hiring your agency. They can say, oh, well, the CEO doesn't work on Fridays, and, they're kind of grumpy in the morning or they're grumpy in the afternoon. So I'd recommend, like, you can get all of this intel on how their organization works and who the personalities are if they're invested in hiring you. So, don't dismiss talking with influencers, but when it comes to the key meetings, you do need all of the decision makers involved.
Terrific. Thank you. I appreciate that, Karl.
Yeah, it's like the one good thing that we can take from timeshare sales pitches, where you want the free this or that, and they require that if you're married, both members of both spouses need to be in the room. I mean, they know they're trying to eliminate objections. I would not recommend using anything else from timeshare sales techniques, but all of the key decision makers must be in the room is a good idea. And again, if they agree to come and they don't, that gives you license to reschedule the meeting. And if they keep flaking out on you or they refuse to follow your process, that already is a sign that they're not a good match.
Right.
Except you found out they're a bad match now, rather than 6 months from now, where maybe they've been behind on their bills for 3 months and are suing you or something like that. Something to consider. So, Sean, any follow-up questions as we wrap up that?
Very helpful and beneficial. I appreciate that. Thank you very much, Karl.
Absolutely. Sean, thanks for joining. Well, that concludes today's agency office hours with a focus on getting leads in the door and then what do you do once you have them. If you've joined live, you'll get the recording within 24 hours. If you're watching the recording, well, you've got it now. If you're interested in the Diversify Your Agency's Lead-Gen workshop coming up live in July of 2024, book your ticket by the end of June to get early bird pricing, or I think you'd still get a good ROI even if you join at the regular price. Thanks so much for joining, and good luck out there.